Hey, this is Cult Baby, and today I want to talk to you about, about myself. More specifically, I want to talk about my gender identity as a gender fluid person and sort of the journey of self discovery that I took to understand my gender. So, to start off, I should probably explain what gender fluid means. Basically, if you're a cisgendered person, let's say, you identify as the gender that you were assigned at birth. Usually either male or female, sometimes intersex, but sometimes those people get assigned something different, but that's all something else entirely. If you're transgender, then you identify as a gender that is different than the one you were assigned at birth. Now, if we put gender in as a spectrum, where, you have female at one end, male at the other, and there's some stuff in between. Basically, my gender does not stay fixed in one location anywhere along that spectrum. It moves. It sometimes will appear at the feminine end, sometimes at the more masculine end, and sometimes somewhere in the middle, but the point is, it's not fixed. It's fluid. Thus, the term gender fluid. I have my own little names that I've sort of made up for different areas along this spectrum that I tend to fall into. I usually call the one at the female end femme, and the one at the other end would be masculine or mask, and then a little closer to the middle, but still definitely female, I usually call that butch. On the masculine side, a little bit closer to the middle, but still pretty masculine, I call that my pretty boy. And then in the middle is kind of just, fuck if I know. I don't really know what to call myself at that point, but it's not really one or the other. But yeah, I tend to see myself usually as one of those five. And for the record, those are entirely made up terms that I use to describe myself. There's nothing official about them. And if you have different words to describe your own gender identity, that would actually be really interesting to hear about in the comments. I tend to fall somewhere in the feminine half of the spectrum the most often, maybe like 65% of the time, something around that. Even when I'm not feeling particularly feminine, since I was assigned female at birth, most of my wardrobe is made up of feminine clothing, so that's how I often express myself the most. Whether or not I actually perceive myself as feminine, I usually dress feminine. As far as my preferred pronouns go, really, he, she, they are all okay, as much of a slogan as that sounds like, because they all apply to me, at least some of the time, so really you can't misgender me. I mean, ideally, any time a person would refer to me, they would ask me at that time which pronouns I would prefer, however I'm expressing my gender that particular day. But obviously that's a lot to ask, especially when sometimes when people are talking about me, I'm not going to be there when they're talking about me. So I guess they is the safest pronoun to use because it's kind of all-encompassing, but really that only works if you're not sure at the time which pronoun would be my preferred. But like I said before, really all are acceptable. I won't really correct you unless you ask, because like I said, pretty much any pronoun will apply to me at least some of the time, so, I don't really experience body dysphoria or gender dysphoria to speak of, which is good because I had plenty of problems to deal with growing up without dysphoria to act on top of that, so I'm grateful for that. I sometimes get sort of irritated when I feel that I am expressing myself as much as I can, whatever gender it is that I feel, and then I get misgendered, but it's more of just kind of an irritation that, the rest of the world doesn't perceive me the way that I perceive myself all of the time, but that doesn't necessarily count as a dysphoria, I would say. It doesn't affect me that deeply. As to my gender discovery journey, when I was really young, I was kind of obsessed with gendered labels. I liked to be perceived as a tomboy sometimes, but then sometimes I would go out of my way to seem very girly, and it was really confusing. It was kind of like an identity crisis because I wanted very much to fit very specific labels, but the labels that I wanted to fit me were constantly changing. And it took a really long time for me to understand and accept that I can be masculine and feminine and something else entirely whenever I feel that that describes me. And I have no obligation to stick to any one idea of myself. I can be fluid, basically. But the first time that I was actually exposed to gender fluidity specifically was on the internet. I haven't seen the video in a long time, so I don't even know if I'm remembering it correctly, but it was a video of a really pretty woman who is looking in the mirror. She's wearing a red dress, her hair is really long and blonde, and she wipes off all her makeup, and she wipes the makeup off her arms, and it reveals tattoos, and I think she cuts her hair, and she just puts on a suit, and all of a sudden she has this very butch, very masculine look, almost to the point where you can't tell if she's a man or a woman. And when I saw that video for the first time, it really struck me. I felt like it really spoke to me in some way that I really couldn't put my finger on. Now, of course, I kind of understand that this is something that a lot of non-binary people go through. They see something like that, or trans people for that matter, and they see something like that and they're like, that speaks to me in a way that I can't quite put my finger on why. Of course, it's not because I'm trans or anything, but, you know. When I was a teenager, I remember one time I stole some ace bandages from my school, and then I went home and I tried to use them to bind my chest. And I didn't do things like this very often, but every now and then I would go through sort of periods where I very much wanted to be perceived masculinely, where I would experiment with makeup and with my hair and with my clothing to kind of look as masculine as I could get away with. I never told anybody in my family about this sort of gender exploration, and partly because, you know, I was pretty unsure of it myself. I didn't really know what to call it. I hadn't settled on anything, really, other than the fact that I didn't always want to be perceived as female. And obviously, my family wouldn't have been very accepting of this anyways, so it was just best that this was an idea that I kept to myself. I had a trans binary friend who I told, you know, this kind of gender exploration. I told him about this, but he was very supportive. He kind of was like, you know, do whatever you're going to do. Do you want me to call you different pronouns? You know, and even though he was very supportive, I was very hesitant to take on any labels, mostly because I saw what he went through, and he had very severe gender and body dysphoria, and seeing him go through that, you know, is like, oh, I couldn't possibly be, you know, trans or anything, because, you know, I'm seeing what he goes through, and our experiences are not at all the same. But So I just assumed that I couldn't be trans because our experiences weren't very similar. Of course, I understand now that lots of non-binary people have similar experiences to what I had growing up, and not very similar to many binary trans people, actually. A lot of us go through self-doubt in our sort of gender exploration because it isn't always very similar to a binary trans person's experience, so we kind of think, it must not be real, it must just be in my head, maybe I'm just being trendy or whatever, because I couldn't possibly be a trans person, because I don't actively hate my body, and I don't always wish that it were exactly this way or that way, and a lot of us basically just have to come to the conclusion that everybody's experience with gender is very different and very personal. And some of us, you know, kind of realize, oh, I'm not cis, but I'm not necessarily going to take on any labels because I don't really know what I am. And that's perfectly fine. The point is, though, that, you know, your own perception of yourself is really what matters. It doesn't matter if it lines up with somebody else's experiences exactly or anything like that. What matters is what you feel, because that's basically what gender is. It is about your perception of yourself and how you want to be perceived by others. It's a role. It's social. it has nothing to do with your biology and everything to do with what's going on in your head. Well, I guess that's biological, but the degree to which gender is biological and to which it is merely a social construct is hotly debated, and I don't know the answer, so I can't really give you one. It seems to be at least a little bit of both. I can't say one way or the other, whether it's purely one or purely the other. It seems to be a mix of both, as far as I can tell. But what I can tell you from my own experience is that it's something that's very personal, and nobody else's experience of gender will necessarily define your own. As far as who I'm out to, I'm out to my fiance, some of my very close friends, and, you know, all of you guys, obviously. I would be more openly out in my day-to-day life, but in fact, I would really like to be more out in my day-to-day life, but I don't think that I could take that much rejection on a day-to-day basis. I mean, even if people don't outright tell me, oh, you know, you're wrong or you're a sinner or whatever, you know, even the people that aren't outwardly super judgmental are still probably not going to understand. And some of them may not be courteous enough to take the time to try to understand. And I guess I don't necessarily feel I need to be understood by everyone. I'm out to the people that I really care about, so it's really more of a matter of being able to live my life fully as myself than about getting the recognition of others. But yeah, I guess only time will tell exactly how far out of the closet I come. I guess we'll see. That's pretty much all I have to say about that for right now. If you have any questions for me that I haven't answered in this video so far, you can absolutely leave them in the comments below, or, you know, tweet at me, send me an email, whatever. I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. And if you're a trans person or a non-binary person or another gender fluid person, it'd be really cool. Definitely talk about your own experiences in the comments below, because I would love to hear them. And really, for me personally, understanding my gender didn't come from, you know, scientific research and things like that. It came from hearing other trans people's stories and understanding how different and yet how very similar a lot of our experiences were. That's what helped me to most understand myself. So maybe putting your own stories out there for other people to read about and hear about might help other people come to their own better understanding of themselves. I have something else entirely unrelated to talk about. So at the end of 2019, last year, I actually quit my job, and so did my fiance. We quit at the same time. We were working at the same place. The details of that I'd rather not get into right now, but the point is, right now I'm unemployed. I'm looking for a new job. I specifically want to find a job that I can do from home because I don't have my license, and even if I did, I don't have a car, and I don't want my fiance, who has found a job already, to have to work his schedule around mine to be able to take me to work. And even if wherever I find a job would be close enough for me to walk to, it's winter right now, and I really don't want to have to walk. So it's been kind of a struggle finding work from home, but in the meantime, any Patreon support, any PayPal donations, or hell, even just buying something off of my Amazon wish list, like equipment. I have some soundproofing things and some lighting things that are on my Amazon wish list. Those would be immensely helpful to me and to my channel, and to just generally being able to support me and Nathan right now during it. It's not a financial crisis, you know. I'm not super worried about the bills or anything, but it'll be a little bit before Nathan gets his first paycheck, and I don't know how long it'll be before I make a paycheck again, so it's a little worrisome. Money's a little tight right now, and I would really, really, really appreciate any additional support that we could receive. So thank you in advance for that. That's all I have to talk about today. I am Xcult Baby, reminding you to go free yourself.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click like, leave a comment letting me know what you think, subscribe and ring the bell to see more from me in the future, and share this video with anyone who might enjoy it. Social media links and my email address are in the description if you want to contact me or follow me on any other platforms. And extra special thanks to all of my patrons. I really appreciate your generosity and support.
I just don't know how to fight.